You ready, Chris?
Yeah, I was born ready.
Before we get started, there's iced tea at the back. Go help yourself to some. We didn't do coffee tonight because it's hot outside, so we got some nice iced tea there. The bathrooms are just out and to the right, and the emergency exit is just around the corner there, and out the front doors. There'll be 3 speakers tonight. I'll be your first speaker. It'll be followed by Kathy Flett and then Chris Scott. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is the historical inequity between Ottawa and what is now Alberta. And so for that, we're going to go all the way back to the 1880s. From 1880 to about 1903, there was a huge American settler movement. And they were popping up communities all over what was then the Northwest Territories. And this made Ottawa very nervous. How many here have ever heard of the little spot on the map called USONA? A couple of people. Well, I actually live 6 miles from USONA. But do you know what USONA stands for? The United States of North America. How many people here know the town of Rimbey? Most people. Its original name was Kansas Ridge. The city of Airdrie. Its original name was Yankee Valley. There's a little community not very far from me that's still there, and its name is Dakota. You've got all over what is now Alberta and Saskatchewan, you've got towns that used to have American sounding names, or still do. And that made Ottawa very, very nervous because it was a lot easier to absorb a territory than it is to absorb a province. And that was one of the main reasons why they wanted to cut provinces out of the territories and make it so that the Americans could not absorb it. In 1904, I'll say, because Kathy and I go back and forth, 1903, 1904, Sir Clifford Sifton said the following: "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our people to the east, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way to our prosperity." Now, why do we care that some guy 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago, said that he wanted all of the prosperity of the prairies to go to Ottawa? Well, that's one reason, but he's also one of the main authors of the Alberta Act. He was the Minister of the Interior, and he is one of the authors of the Alberta Act. So on September 1st, 1905, the Alberta Act and Saskatchewan Act came into being. And that made Alberta and Saskatchewan the only 2 provinces that were brought in by an act of legislation rather than by negotiation to come into Confederation. All the other provinces came in by negotiating their way in, but we were legislated into being. How many people here have had the chance to read the Alberta Act? We've got 1. I would encourage everybody to go to the Government of Alberta website and download it. It's not a very long document, and it is very eye-opening because in there, they give us the name of a province, but they give us the rights and responsibilities of a territory. So we were not equal right from day one to the other provinces. And this, you'll see that they've tried to use that continually ever since. In 1913, they brought in the Railroad Act amendments. Now, what did this do? This made it so that regional railways were not allowed to cross provincial lines. So if you were shipping grain to Thunder Bay, you would have to unload and reload onto a Saskatchewan carrier, then onto a Manitoba carrier, and then on to an eastern carrier. But interestingly enough, they made it so that the eastern railways were exempt. But this was really hard on the regional railways. Like you had Canadian Northern, you had Canadian or Alberta Central, you had West Central. You had many different railways that in the West that were just regional, and they would haul. If they were hauling Alberta Central, they had a depot in Regina, so they would haul to there, but they had to shut that depot down and had to start going on Saskatchewan Central Railway. And so by the late 1930s, most of the railways had gone out of business, the regional railways. Some of them hung on for another 20, 30 years, but majority of them gone out. And in 1943, a new railway was formed and bought up all the assets of all those regional railways and made a national railway. We now know that railway as Canadian National Railway. And they were formed on the skeleton of the regional railways, the Western regional railways. In 1930, the National Resources Transfer Agreement came through, and that gave the provinces control over their natural resources. But at the time that they said that, they said, but there's going to be exceptions for Alberta and Saskatchewan. And we've had to fight against that ever since. In 1931, on December 11th, the King decreed the Statute of Westminster. And what that did is it gave the provinces, the people, sovereignty over their land and resources in care of the provinces. So with that, there is not a piece of land in this province that is federal territory according to the Statute of Westminster. That means the national parks and any other federal land is not federal land by decree of the King in 1931. And at that time, he gave it to the people in care of the provinces, which means that if we had taken control of Jasper, it would never have been the fire that happened there. Our firefighters could have got in there, dealt with it. We would have done a much better job of managing the forest than the federal government has ever done. In 1935, the Canada Wheat Board was formed as a voluntary marketing board. And it applied to all of Canada. But in 1943, it was made mandatory for Western Canadian farmers. So what did this mean? So if I lived in Ontario and I wanted to sell my grain to the United States, I could pull up to my grain bin, load my truck, drive across the border and sell my grain. If I lived west of the Manitoba border, I wanted to sell my grain to the United States, I would pull up with my truck to the grain bin, load up, pull into the local elevator, offload it, pull around to the other side of the elevator, reload it, paying to buy it back from the wheat board. Then I could ship it to the United States. So it was very uneven, unfair system. And we had it in place until 2012. And in 2012, they finally abolished the Canada Wheat Board. But the reason that they did it, because Western farmers had finally had enough. And we had 13 farmers that were willing to go to jail for it. And they ran the border, and they spent between 6 months and a year in jail each to fight it. In 1947, Alberta had just discovered vast oil reserves. So the federal government brought in the federal control of oil pricing and pipelines. So under that, we couldn't set our own oil prices. We had to sell it at what the federal government decided, which is against the Natural Resources Transfer Act that I talked about earlier, but they didn't care. They brought that in, and we couldn't put a pipeline in the ground without their permission. And that stayed in place from 1947 to 1950, and finally it was repealed. How many in here are old enough to remember the Great Flag Debate of 1965? There's a couple of people that are old enough. I'm not quite old enough, but so in 1965, the then Prime Minister, Lester B. Pearson, decided that he wanted to make a distinctively Canadian flag. It was supposed to represent Canada from coast to coast. So you have the two oceans, which are the red bars, and then the people are supposed to be represented by the center. Well, Diefenbaker stood up in the House of Commons and said, why is it the sugar maple then? Because it's only found in Eastern Canada. Why is it not something like the Manitoba maple, which is found from coast to coast? Pearson did not like that, and he forced closure on the bill and forced it to a vote. Not a single Western Canadian MP voted for the current flag. And in 1967, 3 years afterwards, 2.5 after the debate, during the centennial celebrations for Canada, many of the Western Canadian towns and cities flew the red ensign rather than the maple leaf. But by the time I started school in the early 70s, it had already been memory hold. I knew nothing about it. You stood at the front of the class, and I salute the flag, the emblem of my country. To her, I pledge my love and loyalty. I knew nothing about it until I was researching years later. Even people that went through it forgot about it. But we have two national flags in this country, and most people do not even realize that. The red ensign is still an official flag of Canada. And if I'm going to fly a flag, it's going to be the red ensign, because it at least represents Western Canada to a certain extent. In 1973 to 1974, they brought in the oil export taxation policies, and they capped Alberta's oil profits. So you probably heard in the 1970s we had an oil shortage. Well, we didn't actually. What it was is they capped our oil production by saying that if you made over a certain amount in production, all those profits went to Ottawa. Now, if you were an oil company and you produced 102 barrels and the 2 barrels profits were going to go straight to Ottawa, would you produce that extra oil? What's the point? So that was the main reason that there was an oil shortage in the 1970s. Now that stayed in place for 18 months, and our then Premier Peter Lougheed fought against it and got it finally repealed. But in case you think that they were done with us, in 1980 they brought in the National Energy Program. Now, the National Energy Program was everything that was in the 1973 and 74, plus they could set the price that we had to give priority to the East on our oil sales, and they set the price that we sold it to them at. So you had all of that in place. And that stayed in place until 1988. And it was finally repealed by Brian Mulroney, but he didn't do it because he loved Alberta. He did it because the oil prices had dropped so low that it cost more to maintain the program than they were getting out of it. And you were going into an election year. And he wanted it to appear like he was. I talked to a guy that actually sat on his advisory board the other night in Brooks. And he filled me in a lot more that even I didn't know. And he said it was sneaky because they literally did it in that time because the election was coming up. And they wanted the votes from out here, even though they were doing it because of the oil prices. During the 1980s and the 1990s, we had several important things happen. First off, we had the repatriation of the Constitution in 1982. There's others that talk more about that one. It wasn't the greatest thing that's since sliced bread. It actually weakened our Constitution, didn't strengthen it. We had more rights under the BNA Act than we had under the Canadian Constitution Act. But then we had the first referendum in Quebec, followed in the 90s by the second referendum. And after the second referendum, the government of Canada went to the Supreme Court, and they said, is a province actually allowed to separate? And the Supreme Court said, yes, they are, but these are the rules that have to be followed. And that is what got written into the Clarity Act and made into the Clarity Act. And that is why everybody has been trying to follow that method, because that is what was set up by the Supreme Court after the last Quebec referendum. So that brings us now into the 2000s. And in 2012, Bill C-38, the Jobs, Growth and Prosperity Act, gave Ottawa complete control over all of Alberta's projects. Well, every province, but they mainly focused on Alberta. That means that we had to get their permission to build a pipeline. We had to get their permission to build a highway. We had to get their permission to build a high-rise. Any major project had to have the permission of the federal government before it could be done. In 2016, they brought in federal carbon pricing, which we all know is a nightmare. In 2019, they brought in Bill C-69, no more pipelines, and Bill C-48, the tanker ban bill. Under that, we can't ship anything off the West Coast. But the United States ships up and down that coast continually. So we've always had stricter handling guidelines than the Americans. And so if there's going to be an accident, chances are it's going to be the Americans. We'll have another Valdez type, not from Canadians. But these 4 bills were in the MOU to be repealed that Danielle Smith signed with Carney last fall. Within 1 week of their having signed the MOU, the House of Parliament met, held a vote on it, and defeated that MOU. So all of these are still in effect at this time. And they're designed to kill our economy. Because way back in 1980, when they brought in the National Energy Program, our then Prime Minister, the very first Trudeau, made the comment that Alberta cannot be allowed to become the economic engine of Canada. And they have been fighting to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that brings us now to modern day. We actually have 3 bills, one that's passed, one that's in the Senate, and one that's still in the third reading. That's Bill C-8's in the third reading. Bill C-9 has passed the House and is in the Senate. And Bill C-22. Those 3 bills, number 1, Bill C-8, the Internet censorship law, that allows them to take you off the internet with a stroke of the minister's pen, and you have no repeal. Hopefully it never gets through, but now that they have a majority, chances are it will get through. And that should shock everybody. And that doesn't mean, taking you off the internet doesn't mean, excuse me, doesn't mean that you will just don't have an IP so you can always just use a VPN and get in and still do what you want to do. You will have your online banking. You will have everything. If they decide they don't have any written rules, it's at the discretion of the minister. Bill C-9. Bill C-9, the anti-hate law. If you are a Christian and you quote scripture, you go to jail and lose all your assets. If you are talking in a meeting like this, and somebody decides that I'm speaking hate speech, I can go to jail and lose all my assets. Bill C-22, it has a really great sounding theme. It's the Animal Protection Bill. And what that does, though, is it gives peace officers and the SPCA the right to go into your property in your house without any warrant, SPCA has been for the last few years able to go onto your property to do inspections, but now they can go into any building, in any house. They can take a peace officer with them, and they can go in as well. And it's under the guise of animal protection. But what that does is it's just stripped you of all your property rights, and they can do what they want. So with that having been said, just those last 3 bills, to me, are the most argument that you need. You don't even need that historical perspective that I gave. Those 3 bills should have everybody worried. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Kathy Flett. Kathy has been doing this for a while as well, and she is probably one of the most, I'm trying to think of the right word, informed speakers and eloquent speakers that we have. So I would like to thank Kathy. Thank you. Oh, you need the magnet. He put it on with the magnet, not the clip.
Thank you. Where's it?
Makes me miss Max.
Makes you what?
Max does the sound.
Yeah, I know.
Max is really good at it.
He is. He is.
I'm
Well,
horrible at it.
now that Shane has made you all miserable, here's Kathy. Let's see how we can do. Take it away. Well, I'm actually going to build on the theme that Shane just laid out, which is how the courts, how the rules, how the laws are continually used against us. And one of the things that I noticed, particularly over these last couple of weeks, is that one of the greatest benefits of going through this process, with this referendum process, particularly with the petition and all of the fun that ensued with that, is that we get to see in real time just how messed up the federal level of our government is. You can't not see it, right? It's right there. And sometimes our federal politicians make the dumbest statements, but they don't realize it. And one of those really dumb statements came out of Carney's mouth, which itself isn't a surprise, although nobody's got anything on Justin. But nevertheless, one of the dumbest things that he said was at Davos earlier this year. And the comment he made was, if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. And then he went on to say, this is not sovereignty, it's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination. He was talking about Canada's place in the world, but he just completely described Alberta's place within a united Canada. He really did, right? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Well, that's us. And we are subordinates, and more of us are realizing this. Now, Canada is also part of the Commonwealth, right? Which sounds, like maybe it's a good thing. It's common, but Commonwealth for whom? We got to start asking these questions. It sounds like a fair for all type of idea. But Canada has a ruling class that not too many people know about called the Laurentian elite. These are the men and women who rule the show behind the politicians. And in fact, they're even the ones who decide which politicians are going to get in and which ones aren't. And I would argue, I don't have anything to back this statement, but when I hear the word Commonwealth, I think, well, Commonwealth for who? Because it's not us. Clearly, we do well despite what goes on in Ottawa. So these Laurentians, they've been in the go for generations now, since even before we were a country, since before 1867. And one of the things they like to do is divide and conquer in order to keep in power. This has been their age-old, it goes as far back in time as possible, right? And so they did that to us. For decades, they used divide and conquer strategies to keep this separatist movement under wraps. And it worked. It worked like a charm. And the way that they would do it is once the movement began to gain momentum, and things were looking really good, and oh my gosh, Ottawa is now getting really nervous, they would find people to go in and infiltrate from the inside and then use the low-hanging fruit of all, the egos in the room, the crabs in the bucket type people who they want to be better, and use them to bring it down. So then, all these guys, stupid conservatives, is dog eat dog, they do this all the time. Well, it's true, but it was instigated on purpose. And so we saw that continue to happen until this time. This time it didn't work. And the reason for that is because through no planning of our own, I promise you, all of us that won't shut up about this didn't listen to any of you and get under one banner, right? They were screaming. Albertans were screaming at us, get under one banner. And we all said, no way. Absolutely not. And so we had Chris doing his thing, and Mitch was going over here, and Kathy's talking over here, and Corey Morgan is over there. And then even more voices came out to play. And we created a game of whack-a-mole that they couldn't win. And that's why we got to where we are. So when that didn't work, they were like, okay, we're going to pit East against West. Been doing that forever too. Let's just ramp it up a notch. And it ruffled some feathers, mine included. I got a little bit angry at it, but it still didn't work. For the most part, it was water off a duck's back. So when that didn't work, they came at us with a new tactic, and they tried to pit the generations against each other, particularly the older against the younger. And that didn't work either. In fact, it unified us. And the movement grew in every generation. It didn't matter. So then when that didn't work, they were like, all right, it's time to get serious. And to back up a little bit in the planning of this, believe it or not, it was the Kenney government that gave us that bill to have the ability to have a citizen-led referendum. He did it. Now, he made it completely impossible to do, but he did pass the bill. The current Alberta government realized how terrible it was, went in there, made some changes, saw it wasn't quite perfect, went in there, made some more changes, and then, like the Albertans that we are, when they gave us the go-ahead, we went ahead, right? And we started on that petition process. Well, even then, I don't think the folks in Ottawa and the Laurentian elite thought we were going to get anywhere. But when people started lining up in -40, they knew they had a problem. They knew they had a big problem. So the way that they took it up a notch was, again, they used the courts against us, which is a lot of what Shane described as well, right? They passed laws to use it against us. But what I think a lot of people are missing is how this happened, how this court ruling took place. And to understand the nuances of that, we've got to back up and first revisit how a bill even becomes a law. So what happens is, and they don't typically teach us this in school, but so what happens is a bill is tabled in the legislature. It goes through 3 readings. So all the elected officials have 3 opportunities to read through the bills and suggest changes, make those changes. Once that happens, they have that 3rd reading. Yep, all of us elected officials, we're good with this exactly as it is. It checks all the the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, blah, 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 blah. Then it goes to our lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor, who is appointed, goes through the whole entire bill, and upon seeing nothing on it, says, yep, stamp, now it's law. So every change that the UCP government, the current UCP government made, went through all the constitutional process of the checks and balances to become a law. All of them, without exception. And then they were like, oh no, now we really have some problems. So they found some chiefs, some Indian chiefs, First Nations chiefs, said, hey, we need your help to do something here. And so then they took this whole thing to court, and a judge, in my estimation, made a very unconstitutional ruling because our provincial government used the system, used the governance structure that we have constitutionally to give us that right to have that petition. And a judge, a federal appointed, liberal appointed judge bent the rules to stop it. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. Because that is a taste now of what's to come. Which means when we're out and about talking to our friends, our families, our colleagues, our neighbors, we need to tell them this. The very system that we are trying to get out of because it is so corrupt is being used against us. And there's a lot of people that are out for different politicians' heads and all of that. I don't agree with any of it, just for the record. This is not the time at all to be replacing anybody. This is the time for us to dig in our heels and say, we're going to keep pushing on. You want to put these kind of roadblocks in our way? That's fine. We're Albertans. We're used to it. It's been like that since 1905. We'll find another way to get this done.
We're not asking.
And we're not asking. Exactly. Exactly. And you know that it's this, like, it's so egregious what happened in that courtroom that even our current UCP government is appealing it. That's how bad this is. This is the message that needs to get out. This isn't about money. This is not about pipelines. It's not about any of that anymore. That was a symptom, but that's not where we're at. We are now at the place where they're going to fight us tooth and nail every step of the way. And if anybody needs a reminder of exactly what this federal government is capable of, we only need to go back a few years to watch. And so when they begin to bring this garbage back in, that is when we continue to talk about those mandates and say, I know you don't want to hear about it, but do you remember when? Do you remember when you were 5 minutes from being able to get groceries because you didn't have a pass? Do you remember when you lost your job because you didn't do what the government told you to do? Do you remember when you were told to put your kid in their room for 2 weeks all by themselves because they sneezed? Do you remember when you were not allowed to go and say goodbye to your mom or to your dad when they were dying anyway? And this is the country you want to stay a part of. They're still doing it to us now. They're just doing it differently. And the new divide and conquer is, well, let's divide the people against the government. Because they know the UCP government does have a lot of support, and they know the UCP government is filled with us. They know that. So the new strategy is, let's turn these two against one another. That's what we're seeing, which is exactly why this is not the time to play politics. This is the time to get involved in politics. And this is the same message that I'm going to keep going on until that AGM in the fall. This is the time to get involved. How do we do that? You get that UCP membership, $10. Anybody can get $10. You get that membership. You figure out what a CA is. You got to get educated. This is how we took out Kenny, was through those CAs. It's not how to take out anybody right now, in my opinion. I know that I don't share that same, like others don't share that opinion with me, and that's okay. Listen to all of it and decide for yourselves. But in my estimation, either way, get the membership. Get to that AGM and let this sitting government know that we are not asking. We're telling. We are putting Ottawa on notice, and we will learn the system, to use the system, to disrupt the system, to get out of the system. That's how this is going to be won. If you want an example of that, have a look at El Salvador. I didn't even know anything about El Salvador until this new president that they have, who is kicking ass and taking names down there. And what he did was learn the system, to use the system, to disrupt the system, to change it, to get in it. And roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock happened, and they just kept their noses clean. They followed every law. They just jumped through all the hoops that they put at them, and they won. And now look at what they're doing. They've completely changed that country around. So when we leave here tonight, get online, get all the information that you can. When you find different videos of anybody who's talking about this, share it. Share, 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 share. Our algorithms are a mess right now. It doesn't matter. I posted one picture yesterday that actually went bananas. I think maybe just because it was a tractor and I didn't actually put anything political in the post. I don't know. But anytime you put something political in anything, it will get suppressed. 2 minutes after that, I posted about this event, 3 likes. So it had nothing to do with what time I posted it. It had everything to do with what the content of the post was. So we need your guys' help. You follow all of us everywhere and get this out, so that it's not even about making these rooms big and filled with people. We just need the information out there so people know where to find it. And then together, we are going to get across this finish line. We may have to get a little bit creative about how we do it, and that's okay. But we are going to get there one way or another. And it's going to be through evenings together like this. One other thing I just want to leave you with is, you may or may not know, my friend Angela Tabak and I, a year and change ago, we started the Alberta Women's Independence Network for all the ladies that don't want to go to these kinds of things, or they're nervous, or they've got questions, or whatever. Like, some people just don't like big crowds. Some people just want to have that intimate conversation. We're still doing it. We haven't stopped. And it's working. And it's not just the women. It's just that we are women. But the guys come too. So if you want me to come to Vegreville and you want to have a living room full of people, coffee, wine, I don't care, whatever you want to do, we'll sit there and we'll talk. And we'll get these people's questions answered in a way that they're comfortable in. If we have to go to them, we will do that. We're pulling out all the stops because now is the time. But now is the time to band together. Do not let those Laurentians in Ottawa tear us apart. Thank you very much. Oh, I get to introduce Chris? Okay. Everybody knows Chris. Chris needs no introduction, but he is the reason you came. So without further ado, you're going to need this thing too?
Yeah.
Okay. So without further ado, hands together for Chris Scott.
I get that a lot. So Kathy says that people come here to see me, but I should tell you that the rooms are generally fuller and there's more applause when Kathy's here. So I don't know what that tells you. Well, thank you all for coming out on is it Tuesday or Wednesday? On a beautiful Wednesday evening. It looks like we're about to get a little bit of rain. And what happens when it rains? Oh, there we go. Things grow. It's okay. We're going to focus on the positive part of it right now. Things grow. I imagine probably around here, everyone got their seeding done. I hope they're ready to rock for rain. I hope. So as I was sitting back there looking out the window, I'm noticing we got some gray clouds rolling in. It's kind of gloomy, doomy outside, and we're probably in for a little bit of a storm. And it's going to be a little bit miserable for a while. But what's the outcome of that? It's something really good, right? And it got me thinking very philosophically, like, hey, we're kind of under a little bit of a dark cloud right now. There's things going on in politics. There's things going on in the movement that are kind of putting a damper on it. It feels like the momentum is a little bit waning. And there's some polls that show support has dropped a little bit. It's a little bit gloomy. But when we experience things like this, especially with groups that are as dedicated to an outcome as we are, these things are not a big setback like what you might think. I've watched this happen over and over and over in the very short time that I've been paying attention to politics, civics, that sort of thing. And every time we go through something like this, what happens after is amazing. Like when the last federal election finished, we had just gone through like a slump. Everybody was just not paying attention anymore. They're kind of comfortable in their lives. Oh, we're going to let somebody else do it. And then we had this federal election. There was this dark cloud, and we're like, oh my goodness, we're in for another 15 years of this crap. And lo and behold, we experienced the greatest political revival Alberta's probably ever seen. And we did some really amazing things, and we're continuing to do that. So much so that we have a referendum coming up. And it's not exactly the question that we wanted to see. We wanted to see something with teeth because we want action. We want all of the work we've been doing over the last 6 years, 40 years for some, to start bearing some fruit. We want to see the growth coming up after the rain. And we might not see it this fall, but that's okay because we're moving forward. If you think back even like 3 years ago, would you have believed that we would be where we are now, where we're going to have some sort of a referendum on Alberta sovereignty, where we're going to move ahead, take that next step towards an independent nation of Alberta? I didn't believe it. I thought it was years off. Yet here we are after all that doom and gloom. And we have a really interesting opportunity. It's not an opportunity per se to show a majority and start negotiations to secede from Confederation. Now it's an opportunity for some more conversation. It's an opportunity to start learning more, to reaching more people. Thanks for the visual effects, Shane.
That was the storm passing.
That was the storm. Yeah, that was the storm. So, there's a lot of people that are frustrated and they're the frustration is manifesting in kind of the same old thing that we always see. Oh, a politician has to pay. Oh, we have to remove this person. We have to remove that person. We have to take over. We have to do all these things. I want to remind people, we've removed, replaced, and taken over multiple times in the last 6 years. And I really don't believe any of those things got us any closer to our goal. I really don't. I think they were important. They made sure that our politicians in Alberta knew, that we're watching, we're paying attention. But in the sovereignty conversation, didn't really change anything. And we're kind of at a crossroads for that again. We're at a place where some people are starting to focus their motivation and their volunteerism and their financial help on achieving a specific political outcome. And the one that I see right now is removing a premier and installing a new one. I don't think that's nearly as important as it is to continue to build this movement, continue to become the parade that the politicians want to get in front of. Because it doesn't matter who we have, it doesn't matter who our politicians are, if we're not showing them what we want, if we're not manifesting the will of the people in something tangible that they feel, they're not going to do what we want. I just watched, I can't remember who said it, but somebody stated that the United Conservative Party's position as a party is that Alberta should remain in Canada. And I'm scratching my head thinking, wait a minute, if 60 to 70% of party membership believes that Alberta should be an independent nation, how is it that the party is taking the stance that their formal position is that we should stay? That doesn't make any sense. And then I realized, well, it's because we haven't manifested the will of the people in something tangible yet. We haven't had any kind of a referendum where we can show some numbers. We haven't done that type of thing. And we might be able to change some of that internal party policy in an AGM or something like that. We may have a standing ovation when somebody asks if the party would rather get out of Confederation than continue to spin their wheels doing what we're doing. But at the end of the day, the only way that happens is if we continue doing the things we're doing. And we continue talking. We listen first to the people that oppose our opinions, and then we talk to them and we share why we believe the things we believe. We have to become, I've been using the term disciples or MLM salesmen for Alberta independence. We have to learn how to talk to people and encourage those people to go forth and spread the good news of Alberta independence where they're at, right? We have almost a full house. The house is very small here, but it's almost a full house. And if you consider how many people are in this room with how many people we have to reach in Vegreville, it seems like a big deal, right? Kind of seems like it is. But then if you start breaking it down into smaller chunks, like everyone in this room, maybe you talk to 10 people or maybe we'll talk to 20 people. I don't know. All of a sudden, the numbers don't look so small. And if there's one thing I've learned speaking to groups of people from 6 once in Fort McMurray to 1,200 in Medicine Hat once, it's when you can convey the facts about Alberta's position within Confederation, our history, where we've been, where we are right now, where we are potentially going, and where we could go if we took control of our own destiny, of our own sovereignty, the facts speak for themselves. It's a really easy conversation to have. Many of the things that Shane shared are precursors to things that we're feeling right now. The one thing that really, it's just burned in my brain is when they called our federal election at 8:09 and our ballot closed at 8 o'clock. We hadn't even taken our ballot boxes to be counted yet, and they called the election. And for anybody, it doesn't matter what side of this conversation you're on, if that's the situation that you live in your democracy, you don't live in a democracy. You're subjugated by people that live somewhere else who are more than you, a bigger voice than you. Their will manifests bigger than yours, and you can't change it, right? So that's not a left or a right thing. I'm sure there's some, even liberal voters in Alberta, they must realize that they didn't even need to vote. It didn't matter. Didn't make any difference. We feel like that as conservatives, but the liberals here feel the same way. If there's an NDP activist and they want to do something in Alberta to change something to do with our relationship within Confederation, they can't either. So while this is a largely conservative movement, I would wager, it's not just a conservative movement. This conversation is for everybody. So our talking points have kind of shifted from this is why we need to leave, because I forgot to ask, is there anyone in this room that is not already on board with the idea of Alberta sovereignty? Anybody opposed? Or just questioning on the fence? Yeah. So almost everybody here is on board with the idea. So if we had a referendum tomorrow, I'm assuming that everyone in this room would likely vote the same way. So that means that when we're talking to each other, specifically when me and Shane and Kathy are talking to groups of people, we're no longer trying to convince you or trying to alleviate your concerns or answer your questions about Alberta independence. Now we have a different job, and our job is to encourage you to become leaders. Encourage you to be bold in your conversations, to start meeting people where they're at, where we can't go. Tomorrow you're going to go to your jobs and your families and your gyms and things like that, and you're going to encounter people. Maybe you're going to be wearing a beautiful piece of overpriced Alberta merch that is available outside from any of the lovely ladies, or Brad there, he's lovely as well. You know, yeah, we need to support ourselves because we spend a lot of time doing this. I'm away from my job, away from my family. So when we sell a sweater, it kind of takes the sting off. But even more importantly, when you're wearing that kind of stuff, when you go out into the world and you're wearing your opinion on your sleeve or on your protruding belly, as I am, that opens up conversations. And you might get some people that swear and curse at you, and then you can reply with, "You mad, bro?" or something like that. I don't know. But at least it's an opportunity to have a conversation, right? And if we start having these conversations, if we educate ourselves as to the facts, the merits and the benefits of Alberta independence, it's a pretty easy conversation to have when you're going with the facts. And that's what we need to do. And regardless of what our political scenery looks like at any given time, it's really us who's going to change the way this is working. This isn't a political. It is a political issue, but it's not a political solution in the classic sense of a political solution. It's more like a societal issue where we have to kind of be, disciples for independence and shift the way society is thinking about the society, and in that way, we put the politicians into a place where they can no longer ignore it. Does that make sense? We don't see politicians anymore get up in front of a room and say something like, "I am going to stand for this. There is this cause. This is unjust. I'm going to stand for this. Here's why. I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to bring you folks with me, and then we're going to go and get it done." No, it doesn't happen. If society was marching off a cliff, which we are in Canada, 100%, we are literally in Canada voting for our own demise. And the politicians realize that they can get the power and they can get a seat at the never empty tax trough, and they can get all of these lavish benefits of public office by getting in front of that parade that's marching to its own demise. That's what they're going to do. And that's why I say it's not so much a political solution in the classic sense as it is a shift in the way we're thinking and what we're doing. We have to be those leaders creating that parade so that they get in front of it. That's all I got. As I was sitting there thinking of what I was going to say, of which I said none of it. It occurred to me that I think I've spoken at, I don't know, a total probably a few hundred events, maybe. Do you know I've never written a speech? I've had a piece of paper once that had like 5 points on it that I wanted to talk about, because I do forget some points, as I just mentioned. But I don't write my speeches. I don't say the same thing twice. What you folks hear is always, it's what's on my mind and what's on my heart for that time. And I've been wondering, when am I going to run out of things to say? And then I turn on the internet and I just watch a few politicians speaking, and I get some more content. But I am feeling a little bit tired. Like, this has been a long haul, and we got a long ways to go. And I hope I don't run out of things to say. But I do have a favor to ask of you. If I run out of things to say, or if I run out of steam, will some of you step up and do these things? Will you guys become the leaders that we all need to be in order to get this done? Because I tell you, If you're not willing to be a leader in this conversation, if everybody isn't willing to be some sort of a leader, we're not going to reach our destination. It's not going to be done by people like me and Shane and Kathy and the other 28 or 25 speakers we have standing up in front of rooms. It's going to be done. We're going to get across the finish line because of what you folks do. So I just want to encourage you to do whatever you can, where you can. You can use all sorts of different organizations for resources and information, and watch podcasts, learn as much as you can, and let's do this together. But we all have to be leaders. Sorry for putting that on you. Let's have you want to have a 5-minute break? Do we need a 5-minute break, or do you just want to go right to a Q&A?
Let's go 5-minute break.
Shane wants a cigarette. All right, we'll let Shane have a cigarette, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. We say 5. It's going to be 10 people online. It's always 10. So yeah, see you back here in 10 minutes. Thank you.
I will give 2-minute warning.
I just need to sneak in here.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. My pleasure. Thanks.
And I appreciate you sticking up when all the COVID insanity was going on.
Oh, the fun time. Yes, that was the fun time.
to ask everybody. The first favor is Sandy is going to go around with the collection plate. This is entirely funded by people like you. And if you're able to put something in there, that's greatly appreciated. If you're not, it's fully understandable and don't feel obligated. But if you can, it's great. Algorithms are killing us. We can put a poster out for an event, upcoming event, and people in the area won't see it for 4 or 5 days after the event occurred. So if I can get you to go to letstalkalberta.com or the Whistle Stop page, Facebook page, or the Let's Talk Alberta Facebook page, or even freedomcalendar.net, and grab a poster for an event coming up that you know somebody in that area, send it directly to them and ask them to send it out to others. Now, Chris referred to it as MLM. I call it the shampoo method. It's like the Clairol commercials from the 70s and 80s. Yeah, okay, I don't need shampoo, yes. But it's still the shampoo method. You tell 2 friends, and I'll tell 2 friends, and so on and so on and so on. So if you could do that, that would be greatly appreciated. And that goes for everybody that's watching online too. Okay, so we have a small enough crowd here that if you have a question, just stand up, or put your hand up if you don't want to stand up, and we'll just go one by one.
Or if you have something that's concerning you, or something that, like a friend said, hey, we can't be independent because what's one they come up with? We'll be landlocked.
We're landlocked.
That's the most common one. Yeah.
We're landlocked now.
Here's something fun. If I was to say to any of you, well, we could never be independent. That's stupid. We're going to be landlocked. How are we going to get our oil to Tidewater? What would you say? Does anyone have a response?
Trump actually passed approval of 4 pipelines going through the states, including one that was shut down the day before. As far as being landlocked, most of the stuff that goes to Eastern Canada comes through Vancouver from China, right? So if anybody's landlocked, you piss off Alberta, we won't let them through.
I like this guy.
Yes.
Yeah. Well done.
Hey, you want a job speaking?
Well done. Yeah.
It's the way it is. I mean, don't piss off the Albertans. If you want your car to go through, you better let our pipelines through if you want.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ways.
Yeah. And that brings up another point. I mean, we're already landlocked, right? And we haven't had much success in negotiate. It's weird to even say we have to negotiate with the federal government to get our resources, to a port. Like that's absolutely insane.
We're policy locked in addition to being landlocked.
Policy locked, yeah. That's right.
There's lots of European countries that are landlocked that are successful.
Yeah.
That's because of international law that says that you must be
They're independent countries.
have access to Tidewater.
And they have negotiating power and they have leverage and access to Tidewater doesn't guarantee prosperity. I mean, look at Venezuela. I worked in Colombia in 2017 and 18 before I bought the Whistle Stop. And I watched people actually walking from Venezuela through Colombia down into Ecuador and Chile and stuff like that. So that's a real thing. And they got 70% of their border is coastline.
I think that's a point we need to make a lot more clear to people, is that under that same international law, if we become a sovereign country, that applies to us. We are guaranteed access to Tidewater.
Correct.
Yeah. What's another one that we commonly hear? Yes, sir.
What's been thrown at me is that if you separatists win and get your way and Alberta becomes independent, what's going to stop Trump from making us the 51st?
Yes, you can.
We have a flyer coming out very shortly with the answers to that. Okay, that's got 3 basic answers. Number 1, the people don't want it here in Alberta. They don't want it. It's not something, it's a minor portion of the independence movement that wants to join the United States. So that's the number 1. We would never vote to do that. There would not be support for that. But if let's say by chance that happened, and we want it to join the United States. Never going to happen. The reason I can't say never, but it's 99% sure it would not happen. And the reason is first, it has to pass the House. So they need a 50% vote in the House down there in order for it to even move forward. Then it needs 60% in the Senate. So when's the last time you know of anything that passed in the US Senate with 60%? It's just not going to happen. The third thing that needs to happen is you need 26 states to agree to it. And that is also not going to happen. So everybody that says that, oh, Trump's going to make you the 51st state, he likes to talk, but it's physically impossible under the Constitution of the United States. And we would never be the 51st anyways. If it was to happen, we'd be the 53rd, because they would first let in Puerto Rico and then Washington, D.C. And those are very heavy Democratic areas, so the Republicans are never going to let that happen. But let's say that did happen. We're a very conservative area, Republican type voters. The Democrats are never going to let that happen. They do not want that to happen. So it's almost impossible for that to ever occur.
Sounds like something we should be concerned about.
Not really.
Oh.
Personally, I'd rather be the 53rd state than be part of China, which is the
Yeah.
way
Oh,
Canada is
yeah.
going right now. And that's what I tell people. It may not be the most democratic answer, but honestly, I'm a lot more afraid of the way the country of Canada is going.
I would much rather be the Republic of Alberta.
Well, yes,
Yeah, me too.
But if,
Me
you
too.
know,
It's one for sure.
with the fear mongering, with the whole Trump fear mongering, it was just a diversion to get everybody like, oh my goodness. And
Apples
really,
up.
while quietly, we're selling out to China.
Oh, we have been for 20 years,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and the other thing to remember is Trump only has 2.5 years left.
Yeah.
And then who's their boogeyman going to be, right? So we cannot, as Albertans, be even the least bit concerned or worried about any of that. We need to just look after ourselves and do what we need to do.
I saw someone wearing a Trump 2028 hat.
Junior?
Okay, another one that I'm confronted with is, what are you guys gonna use for currency? Like, you gonna-
Bottle caps.
Cinnamon buns.
I can
Yes.
take that one. And then
Yeah, currency. That's a good question. And every time someone asks me something about policy or something like this, I always first respond with, well, what do we do for currency right now? The Canadian dollar. I say, okay, well, if you don't like, as a Western Canadian, if you don't like that our government printed double the amount of money and deflated our currency by almost 50% in the last 20 years or whatever, what are you going to do about it? Right? If you don't like Canadian monetary policy, what are you going to do about it? Absolutely nothing, because the ballot boxes won't even be open before they call the election. So, and the other part of it is anything that we say about this is just opinions. These are just they're our best opinions on what we could do or what the opportunity may be. I've said that an independent Alberta should use the US dollar right off the bat. I don't believe that it would be smart to use the Canadian dollar once Alberta pulls our 16% of new value creating GDP out of the Canadian economy. That's probably a poor currency to use at that point. The US dollar is fairly stable. It's internationally recognized. You can trade everywhere. 90% of our trade goes in US dollars anyhow, so it makes sense. But we would have to build our own currency, right? Sovereignty requires that we don't use somebody else's, we do it ourselves, but that takes time. So the US dollar is a stopgap, build an Alberta reserve to the point where we can launch an Alberta dollar. That's my opinion.
most people do not realize that since 2011, so in the last, 2015, in the last 11 years, that the federal government has spent more money than the rest of Confederation combined from the start. They have almost doubled it now in the last 5 years.
And something else to remind people too, if you're looking for talking points, is our debt, our federal debt is so large that just to service that debt, so just the interest on that debt, costs us taxpayers more than healthcare across the entire country. So the next time you read a headline that someone died in the hospital while waiting for treatment, you can maybe remind a few people that if we weren't servicing this debt for money that we don't know where it actually got spent, we really don't. They say it went towards Ukraine, maybe in that general direction, but after that, I don't know.
I know where it went.
Well,
In
but in the
Trudeau's
mean-
pocket.
and who knows, right? I mean, we can all guess, and we're probably right. But at the same time, that's a devastating statistic. It's a devastating fact that we've got people who cannot get health care because we have a federal government who's too busy doing the things that they want to do rather than looking after the people that
Yeah, I
live here.
got two more that have been thrown at me. How are you gonna police yourself and what are you gonna do for an army?
I don't need to police myself. I have a girlfriend. So again, both of these things, it's the same thing. It's a policy thing, right? So if you have concerns about policing or military at the moment, what are you going to do about it as a Western Canadian? Nothing. In the last 121 years, we haven't been able to do anything about it. Although our, Premier Smith has talked about an Alberta police force.
Which is being put together.
Yeah, but I mean, when it comes to national stuff, we just can't do anything about it. So policing, that's an easy one. We do it ourselves. We're already taking steps to do that. Military, I'm not sure what Alberta would do without the robustness of the Canadian military securing our borders and preventing Chinese incursion on our businesses and assets and those things.
Wasn't Trump suggesting at one time that they care 27 countries around the world, and they do the same, get paid a certain amount to do it?
Yeah.
Alberta would be the 28 until they get their own military.
That's where I was going next. Yeah, 27 nations around the world use the U.S. military as supplemental defense. There's 3 nations that use it for primary defense. I can't remember which ones they are, but there's 3. We could do that, and we should do that for many reasons. The first one is it's there, it's ready. Their military is huge. It's well equipped, and they could do it. They're right next door. That's the other part of it. That would immediately, if we contracted the United States military for our defense, that would immediately fulfill our obligations under NATO that we're talking about right now, right? So but sovereignty means that we don't have somebody else's military defending us, right? So while we're safe and know that our borders are secure and we have people to help respond to natural disasters and things like that, we would be building our Alberta military, maybe with participation with the U.S. military, but we'd have to have our own.
But even you mentioned NATO, there's nothing saying we'll be part of NATO.
Right, yeah.
Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but
No.
that will be for us to decide.
For the first time.
No.
I don't
Yeah.
agree with it, but for the first time, we'll decide whether we want to participate in that or not.
And
What did we pay last year equalization to the federal government? 32 billion?
somewhere around 30 billion.
And Quebec took what, 13.9, 13.3 last year out of the 27 billion paid out. Now the federal income tax, we didn't pay the federal 27 billion that we sent them. We kept that 27 plus the 32. Instead of getting back just $12 billion, we get 5 times as much back.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
What would it mean to Alberta? We
Well,
can build anything we want.
yeah, our military, you talk about an Alberta military, well, the Canadian military, I think it was 15 billion or something like that in 2019.
Less than 60,000 people.
And less than 60,000 people. We're hemorrhaging $30 billion per year for which we get nothing back.
Yeah.
So if we could write a check with what we're saving, half of it, and have our own military that responds to our own disasters and things like that, right? So the opportunity there is huge. $30 billion is a huge amount of money. 600 billion, 700 billion contributed since equalization started is an even bigger number. That's such a big number that had we been able to contribute that to our heritage savings fund, similar to what Norway did, it would be worth just about $2 trillion right now. So instead of losing all this money for interest on debt, we would be earning money that we could use to provide services for our people.
Mhm.
So they're big numbers, very big
Do you know
numbers.
what Canada's largest military contract is?
No.
Training
With
the
Brookfield?
Chinese.
Join the Chinese.
Since
That's true.
since 2018.
What are we training them to do?
Fight Russia, supposedly.
It's weird how Russia has very similar geography and climate to us.
But we're training them. They built a huge base on Salt Spring Island. And they marched down the roads in Salt Spring Islands in Chinese uniforms.
Wow.
Chinese.
Yeah.
There's more Chinese soldiers on our shores at any given moment being trained than there's Canadian soldiers.
Keep your elbows up.
Yeah, to keep your elbows up.
That means we should be doubly safe?
Yeah, we should be doubly safe.
Right.
I think there was a right now.
Yeah, I want to go back to the question. What are the chances of that our question being on the ballot? Or is that something we're not even looking at? We know that Danielle Smith has the 100% right to put that question on the ballot.
My opinion is about 5%.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't tell you what the
Well,
I mean
are we
I
working at that? Are we working to pressure her to put our question on there?
yeah, some are, but it's not just about her. I mean, the courts have tied this up. The First Nations groups have tied this up. It's not as cut and dry and as simple as some would have you believe. There,
Chiefs also run the king, trying to stop.
yeah, that's another interesting conversation that, you committed genocide on our people. It was so terrible. And, oh, please save us from a change that might make things better. It doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, that whole,
Stockholm
yeah.
syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome.
I was just going to say, let's say see, one of the points that Danielle made when she announced the questions going on there, none of us are happy that that's the way the question's going. But I can kind of understand a little bit. I'm playing the devil's advocate. I can't believe I'm doing that. If she put our question on the ballot right now, Dimes and Donuts, a day after she announced it, it would be in the courts again, and they would get injunctions against it. By doing it the way she's doing it, and we answer overwhelmingly that yes, we want a referendum on independence, there's not much that they can do if we do have that. Then the questions put on there. So it's a lot longer process.
So how many ballots are we going to get that day?
10, I think.
Yeah. Well,
But they'll be individual.
They're not going to understand.
Why? It's just reading.
It's just reading.
People
But
can read.
our question will be the first. It'll be a multiple choice, and it will be first. And she said that. So
Aren't most of the questions she's posing already within her power to do?
No. Almost.
yeah.
Almost.
But
There-
not all.
There are some constitutional ones there. For instance, immigration is a
I
shared
mean,
jurisdiction.
more like getting our own police force and stuff like that. Like,
Oh yeah, there are a few that are well within our jurisdiction, and these are things that Alberta has been asking for years. Actually, since the Stockwell Day days,
Yeah.
right? These are things that came from the firewall letter that was the result of Danielle Smith and Stephen Harper and Stockwell Day and Jason Kenney sitting in a basement talking about these things. It's not new, and it's stuff conservatives have been asking for forever. And it blows my mind that not one conservative premier or conservative government in Alberta has ever taken the initiative to do the things that conservative voters actually want them to do. I have a real tough time with it.
I have a theory on that. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole back in history to see, well, what happens when a conservative government federally gets in, but then if we have a strong conservative government provincially, and every single time the strong conservative government provincially fails, because a strong conservative Alberta is not good for a federal conservative party in Ottawa.
Interesting.
Yeah, there was a
Because
direct
they're too
correlation with that.
This is a really good reason why we need out. How many people were excited when they believed that Pierre Poilievre was going to win?
No.
Be honest. I was a little bit excited. I thought, man, this guy's going to be in House of Parliament. He's going to be eating apples all day. It's going to be fantastic. No, I was a little hopeful that things would be less bad, right? How sad is that we have to vote for less bad? Anyway, that's the case. So then Pierre's campaigning in Alberta, and we're having these big rallies. There's thousands of people there. At the same time, we're having conversations about Alberta pension plan and policing and those 5 things: immigration, employment insurance, that type of stuff. And Pierre Poilievre did an interview, and he was asked about Albertans pursuing an Alberta pension plan. He said, no, it's better for Alberta if they stay. And I was like, oh, that's a lie. But he's pretending that he's going to represent Alberta and lying that this is not better for us. And then I realized it doesn't matter who the federal government is in Canada. They cannot advocate for things that make things better for Western Canadians. They just can't. It's outside of the business of federal politics.
And what happened to that pension conversation, right? We were talking about a lot here. And then what happened once Pierre was running?
About 5 or 6 years ago, Mark Friesen, if anybody knows him, may he rest in peace, spoke to Pierre Poilievre at one of his speaking engagements.
I remember that.
About the sustainable development agenda. And Pierre said to him, I know nothing about it. I've never read it. He goes, isn't that funny? You voted yes on it.
Do you know how many our federal politicians, less than 50% of them read the bills they approve or vote down? They don't read the bills.
You know,
and Pierre, when Pierre was here campaigning, that was around the same time as we were campaigning for an Alberta pension plan. He asked the premier to stop pursuing it because it was bad for his campaign, and he would do things for Alberta in exchange for that. And then he wasn't elected, and they dropped the ball on the pension plan. So it's a doubly bad.
Wasn't it one point that Mark Carney actually took $200 million out of the Canada pension plan, invested into Brookfield Asset Management in India, and we can't touch it for 15 years? How can he do it? No matter what political parties in power, they're not allowed to touch the Canada pension plan.
he doesn't feel that the laws and the link apply to him, and he goes around it. And
That's
if
$200
nobody,
million.
Well,
if nobody is willing to enforce the laws, he can do whatever he wants,
That's what he's doing.
and that's what he's doing.
But here's the thing. So I can't comment on it specifically because I don't know the specifics, but I do know that I don't believe that Mark Carney could specifically say we're going to take $200 billion and invest it. The Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board would do that in some way, but
Actually, he announced it in the House of Parliament, and
Yeah,
that's
okay.
he doesn't have the right to do.
Well, that's
supposed to be operated entirely separate.
Yeah.
And he announced it in the House.
I don't believe it. I don't believe that he would break the rules like that.
Do you know that I actually think
You see where I was going here?
the Conservative Party of Canada needs to change their name? Do you know what they need to be called? Liberals with speed bumps.
Yeah. That's pretty sad. But you know why we don't have a real conservative party in Canada? Because Canada will not elect a conservative government. And
Much of the power is in the.
yeah, Canada is a very socialist country, and they want to be more socialist.
That's why they're bringing people from China, from India.
Yep.
They all believe it.
Yeah. Jasper, did you have your hand up for a question back there?
Yeah, Dan Vel was asking, if you do separate, how do we handle the foreign ownership of our resources, all this in?
So if we do separate, how do we handle the foreign resources the foreign ownership of our resources?
Right.
Well, personally, my opinion is that we shouldn't have any more than 49% foreign ownership in anything. Like, how do you claim sovereignty when you can have another country buy up your entire country, your entire nation? It doesn't make any sense. But this is one of those things that it would have to be negotiated, and it would have to be debated, and it would have to be enshrined in our Constitution. Our Constitution that we collectively come up with, and I think there's some being worked on right now for us to read, would outline a lot of these things, what we're going to do for foreign ownership of things, what our government is going to look like, rules around our military, those types of things. And the interesting thing here is no Canadian has ever had input in those things within the Constitution. The original Constitution wasn't a constitution at all. It was the British North America Act. It was an act of British Parliament imposed on Canada as a system of governance. We didn't decide how we were going to be governed or what rights we're going to have or any of those things. British Parliament did. And then when it was brought to Canada in 1982 under Pierre Elliott Trudeau's regime, it was the same thing. It was the BNA repackaged and repurposed with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that we, as the people, actually we weren't involved in that conversation. So what a cool opportunity for Alberta to be the first group of people in Canada, outside of Canada at that point, but the first group of people here that ever decided what our future is going to look like. That's a huge opportunity.
I even saw someone from the Bloc Party in Quebec saying that Alberta should choose its own future.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, we should have the right to choose.
Yeah.
Everybody should. Yeah, for
See, I
sure.
would go one step further than you though on foreign ownership. I would make it so that no foreign owned my brain just did the brain fart thing.
Oh yeah, it does that.
Yes,
Sometimes
it
mine
does
too.
that.
Your hat's on too tight.
Multi State Street, BlackRock, those type companies, they can't own more than 2% of any Canadian company or Alberta company. They should not be allowed because they can take down the whole economy with 6% that they buy of every company. And they can take them down. And they should not be allowed to own more than 2% of any company. So I'll go one further.
I kind of agree, but I'm not an economist, so it's an uneducated comment. But I need to point out that talking about these things is very, very important. That's why Let's Talk Alberta exists. So, and let's talk about this, for instance, foreign ownership and investment. If we regulated foreign ownership too tight, well, now we wouldn't have enough investment to drive the things we need to do, right? So there's a balancing, there's a balance to these things, and the conversations need to include a lot of people who have a lot of experience in these things. But we also need to educate ourselves as best we can, so we at least understand what they're saying. Because I think that the way that the system is right now politically in Canada, for sure, is it's confusing on purpose. Like economics is confusing on purpose, civics is confusing on purpose, because when we're confused, we lose. If we're confused about what's going on, and the people that want to govern us know exactly what's going on, they will govern us harder.
It's like governing us in it's a totally different language.
Exactly. Yes. Yep.
And those of us that took civics when the earth was still warm or cooling.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that was a while ago.
We were lied to on how it actually worked.
Mhm.
So we didn't get it right when we were told how civics worked. We actually thought that we had a voice, but
Propagandized back then too, eh?
Yeah.
So we need to have proper civics taught in schools.
Yeah, maybe that's a requirement in the new nation of Alberta. Maybe it should be a requirement that our citizens are educated in the way our civics work, right? Because how do you have a well-functioning society if you don't even understand the boundaries that the society exists in?
When this independent thing started, why weren't, or were the other premiers, the Western premiers approached, or a friend of mine from BC said, wouldn't you guys be better off to get Saskatchewan and BC and Manitoba on board and just have be fighting for Canada West and Canada East?
Okay, so that was tried in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? It doesn't work under the Clarity Act. Each region has to do it for themselves. So let's say that Alberta becomes independent, Saskatchewan becomes independent, Southern Manitoba joins us, and Northern BC, along with the Kootenays, were to join. They would all have to do it individually. The way that it works under the Clarity Act, so let's use BC as an example. They would have to, the regions that want to become independent would first have to become independent of the province that they are in. Then they would have to become independent of Canada. So they'd actually have to have two referendums on it. Because of the way it is set up, regions have to become independent first. Then once we're our own, we can join in. And if we decide that's the way we want to go, we can go that way. But then it's still up to the people.
You want a cool little history lesson? Look up Westfed and Elmer Knutson. Yeah. So in the late 70s, early 80s, Elmer Knutson, he was the leader of a party called Westfed, and the premise of his party was Canada hasn't actually confederated. And it was kind of a conspiracy fringe theory at the time, but there was some truth to it. And what Elmer was saying was, Western Canada, who was it, Chris Christie? back then? Was the Alberta separatist guy? Is that his name? Chris Christie? Something like that?
Maybe.
Last name was
Yeah.
Christie. I think it was Chris
Yeah.
Christie. There was a separatist movement back then in the late 70s, early 80s.
Mhm.
And Elmer was saying, well, we don't need to separate because we're not actually confederated, and all we have to do is just confederate the Western provinces. It was a really interesting thing. I actually posted an episode of Webster, that old Irish guy that used to do the shows in British Columbia. Absolutely fantastic. He interviewed the Minister of Energy in British Columbia at the time, Bob, can't remember, and then he interviewed Elmer Knudsen.
Mhm.
Really, really cool.
I
And
watched that too.
it's like a time machine, because what Elmer's talking about, the disparity between Western and Eastern Canada back then, is exactly what we're experiencing right now. And I do believe if it hadn't have been for the Charter Rights and Freedoms and the Constitution being repatriated in 82, that Western Canada probably would have pursued that, because this is an age-old thing. It's not a new issue.
Well, there's a reason that 100-year-old comic still applies
Mhm.
today,
The
with
milk
the cow eating from
Yeah.
Alberta and Saskatchewan and getting milked in Ottawa.
Yep.
You can buy a copy of that on a hoodie out in the lobby.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
You're welcome.
Jasper's got a question online there.
Yes, Alan McLeod asked, please comment or clarify what the Albertan Transition Council is and how can we regular Albertans participate in it.
Do you want to take that, or do you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Transition Council has been put together by Keith Wilson and some others. Dennis Kalma is also on there. And they have a website. So albertatransitioncouncil.com, I believe it is. If it's not com, it'll be CA. And you can sign up for their newsletter. I did that yesterday. And so that is a great way to be able to stay up to date as to what they're doing and what's going on. And I have a feeling that they'll also be updating their website as they go. And so the Transition Council is exactly that. So these guys are a whole bunch of experts in their fields that have gotten together to put together a white paper on how to get us from here to here so that we have a roadmap, because my brain's not smart enough to figure that out. So these guys, they are, and so they'll be releasing that white paper here shortly. So that will also be on their website. They also have an X page. I'm following that now as well. And so that is, I think, where we're going to be getting most of our updates as to kind of where we are, what we can look forward to, and what's coming down the pipe. So follow them on X, sign up for their newsletter so you get it in your inbox. Make sure you check your junk and your spam, because it'll probably go over there, all the regular things. And I'm pretty excited to see what they're going to come up with.
What's the name? Sorry.
Alberta Transition Council.
Transition from province to nation is just to be clear.
Yeah, we're not gonna change the sex of the
Hey, you can remember all kinds of rules and decisions of what you can do. Look what happened in Richmond, BC. People lived in that place for years and years. The person owned the home for 25 years, paid taxes on it and everything else. Another one lived from 75, a lady lived in a trailer court in there. All of a sudden, Carney decided to give the land back to the Indians, and you have to get the hell out. And all of a sudden, these people are hiring lawyers to fight it. Carney's made it a rule now that the lawyers can't fight his decision.
Yeah, well, is anyone surprised that you don't own land in Canada? You don't own it. It's not yours. You have the privilege of existing on it in that time as long as you pay your property taxes, but we have no property rights in Canada. And this is one of the major contentious points of the Constitution Act 1982, is that property rights were not included in it. And by not including it, that implied that we don't have it. And that's exactly why. If we had property rights in this country, that couldn't happen. That wouldn't happen. Yeah.
In fact, in 1982, I remember very clearly, everybody was very upset because there was a clause in there, in the Constitution, that gave the government the right to take your house if they needed it for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was another way that property rights were not, right off the bat, were shown to not exist, because they put it right in the Constitution that they can take your property if they want to.
Well, that's in provincial legislation. And do you know how I know that? Because the government took my business once. They seized it. They actually put a chain on the door of my restaurant and took it. And so as I was fighting for my survival, I learned by reading. I read the Alberta Public Health Act, And it says in there, the minister or anyone acting under them to fulfill their duties as outlined in whatever may, if needed, seize assets not limited, including and not limited to property, personal property, real estate. So they can literally come and take your business and turn it into a whatever they want.
So if Alberta separates, can we change that?
Well, of course we can.
Yeah.
That's the opportunity. We can identify these things, these shortcomings in our constitution, and what works. Actually, we can look at both. And then when we build our new constitution, we can build it with the hindsight of 500 years of democratic experience in the Western world. Right? That's the opportunity. Yeah.
You know you're going to lose that magnet.
No, I don't lose things.
I know him better than that.
Still missing
Speaking
magnet.
of property rights, something else that is really pertinent to the rural community is I'm not sure how come there are not more farmers up in arms with the fact that the government wants to know where all of your cows are at every single moment. I don't understand why there's not any pushback on that. There's only one reason.
That's land from Tradu Castro.
Pardon me?
Tradu Castro, they learned that from Cuba.
Learned it from Castro.
Yeah.
Castro from Cuba.
Yeah.
Right?
I thought Mark Carney replaced him.
Yeah.
But
These are the things that need to be talked about, right? When you're in the coffee shops, you're having lunch with a friend. You know, do you know about this? Are you okay with this? And just plant that little seed of, are you paying attention? Did you ever wonder why about 5-6 years ago they started asking us on our T1 gens if we own or rent our home? But it's just a little question there. It doesn't mean anything. And now here we are in 2026 and they're floating the idea of a home equity tax because that's because they wanted to know, is it going to be worth going down this path? Well, let's ask these fools whether they own or whether they rent and see how it changes year after year.
I heard that on the census, there's this one question asking how many rooms your house has. And how many people live in the house. And if you have any spare rooms, then they're gonna charge you for that or something.
Well, you know,
I
there
got
is
the
a
one.
conspiracy theory going on around that. And you know what they say about a conspiracy theory? It's just hasn't been proven yet. That the reason that is on the census this time and hasn't been before is because they have been floating an idea of taking your rooms from you and giving them to immigrants.
Yeah.
And
Over my dead body.
but that is it actually has been that has been spoken about in press conferences before that they've used that idea.
And there was a liberal convention not too long ago, and one guy was saying if citizens want to leave because you can't do business here or whatever, you can't get an education, if you go somewhere else, you have to pay like a exiting fee of $500,000.
You're working around the country or
Yeah.
the States.
And a whole
Well,
bunch
to
of
leave
them-
permanently.
Yeah.
And nobody can.
Otherwise, I was sure would be hurt. I spent 30 years working offshore.
Yeah. And these are the things that are floating out there, and these are the conversations to have with people. That it shouldn't matter who you vote for. Like, are you okay with the government wanting to know where all your animals are? Are you okay with the possibility that you worked all your life to pay off your house and now they want an equity tax? Like, that's an unrealized gain. You don't even know what your house is actually worth until you sell it. I mean, the municipality has an idea. They just go, oh, we want this much money. So suddenly your house is worth this so that they can tax you that. Like, that's all that is. That's it. That's all it is. So now the federal government is going to jump on that as well and say to these municipalities, well, let's figure out a way to up the value of these homes somehow so that we can tax the equity in them.
And 3 years ago, we had a vacant home for sale. And then it was actually vacant. They charged us underutilized housing tax, $150. Brother and me had the house together, so he had to pay $150 and I had to pay $150. Underutilized housing tax.
There's an online question.
In Holland, we've got a new rule. If you have an extended room offer, the government will give you $150 a month to
Rent it out.
rented out to the immigrants. I've got a question online. I'm sure many of us are willing, Chris, but how do we stay in order to capture people's attention?
How do we capture people's attention?
What to say in order to capture people's attention?
Oh, what do we say
Oh,
in
what do
order
we
to
say?
capture?
Free! Alberta. Well, I don't know.
$30 billion.
That's captures attention, yeah. Or break it down into what's the cost per person? Do you remember?
5,000.
Yeah, $5,000 per person.
Offer them a free pierogi dinner.
Wow, there's a way, yeah.
Oftentimes, the best that I have found personally, the best way to get people's attention is just by simply asking questions. So, for example, I was in Lowe's one day and I was complaining that I had to pay with my card because it was something for my business. And I said, man, you know, like I always pay for cash for things because I hate using my card. I don't want the government knowing what I own, but this is for my business, so they gotta know because blah, 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 blah. And the lady behind says, oh, I know. She says, I don't like it either, that we're going to this stupid digital cashless society. She says, I'm not comfortable with that. And I said, well, you know, if we were our own country, we wouldn't have to worry about shit like that.
Yeah.
And she just looked at me. She couldn't even believe I said it out loud. And I was like, have a good day. And I grabbed my stuff. and I just took off. So it's just planting those little seeds like that. You're not being controversial. You're not anything, right? It could be like, pick a topic. You're getting groceries. And inevitably, somebody is going to complain about the cost of milk. Well, yeah, you know, if we didn't have dairy cartels, but we do, that favor the East over us, and I can't even buy raw milk without getting arrested if I want. Like, how stupid is that? It's just, that's it. You don't even have to talk about independence necessarily. Just start getting
too much milk before it's on the green.
Exactly, right? That's another one. Yeah, how expensive is this milk? And yet our dairy farmers are told to pour it because their cows produce too much, and yet we've got lineups like crazy at the food bank. How is this right? And our province can't do anything to change that because that's all federal.
And here's an interesting thing. Did you realize that every time you buy a jug of milk in the store, that it contains a minimum of 10% Quebec milk?
Yeah.
They truck it into the Saskatoon and Calgary from Quebec because they're required under law. That's what actually took down Peter O'Toole within the Conservative Party.
Aaron
O'Toole. Not Peter. He's a good actor.
No, not Aaron. Andrew Scheer.
Andrew Scheer, you're right.
Yeah,
before
Andrew
him,
Scheer.
It took down Andrew Scheer because he was against that, and the dairy cartel, Saputo, made sure that
Sold
he
100,000 CPC memberships.
Yep, to get him to make sure that he got defeated, and no government is willing to go against the milk cartel.
Yeah.
And 10% of all milk and 40% of all cheese, milk that's in cheese, is Quebec milk by law.
I'm curious to hear what each of you, your reaction when Carney said that it's just a dangerous bluff.
And told me that it was that I might get what I wish for. Please.
Why is Carney getting so excited now and getting all kinds of stuff for the West, pushing for a pipeline? Now he's getting, 22 million more for the teachers? And then there's a bunch of crap he's actually pushing now.
Oh, and Tim Hortons is gonna be
And
hiring Canadians again.
Only because Dunkin' Donuts showed up.
Yeah.
Do you know why they're getting excited?
Getting worried.
I think it's because they know we have the numbers. I really
Getting
do.
worried.
If we were just this small fringe minority, they would not be talking about it. They would not have mobilized all of the CPC MPs to campaign against it. There wouldn't be this massive injection of money into social media influencers and advertising. They know that this is serious, and they know that if we aren't stopped and we continue pushing, that we will get what we want. That's why they're doing that.
Carney just approved a German company to develop liquefied natural gas development here in Canada, right? Okay, they took natural gas from Australia, 25,700 kilometers to the eastern coast. Yet 4,000 kilometers from Alberta they didn't take. But now he's encouraging the Germans to develop liquefied natural gas. Doesn't it tell you there's something wrong here?
Well, that's for your safety.
We have a gentleman up here that's been waiting to ask a question.
No, not a question, I just wanted to tell a little short story about taxing people's rooms. We were down in Georgia, and we went to the Callaway Station, the family that started the Callaway Golf line. And they had a bunch of doors along one wall. Nothing behind them, they were just doors. Because the Georgia government at the time charged you a tax for every door in your house. So rich people would put doors up to show how wealthy they were. But it goes to say they can tax you for a door. So they can tax you for a room. So maybe they want to put immigrants in them. Maybe they just want to tax us per room.
Interesting.
There's a
Maybe if
precedent.
we don't get it.
Except on the
that's what
difference
they tax us.
is that they've actually said it in press conferences that they'd like to see
Yeah.
it be used.
Going back to that census, good conversation opener for people.
Yeah.
Do you not find it disturbing that you can get a criminal record or be fined if you don't fill it out? As soon as somebody starts pressuring me like that, my hair goes up, like, whoa,
Well,
I don't wanna
furthermore,
do it now.
yeah.
Because why are you telling me I'm gonna be a criminal if I don't fill out your stupid questions?
I also heard.
I live in a fifth wheel behind a dairy barn. Good luck finding me.
The other thing to remember with regards to that census, I took a job as a census taker like 25 years ago or something, and it was so simple. How many people? Men, women. That was where it ended. Men and women, and then age category. So it wasn't exact birthday like what this one asked me,
Or how many
And-
attendants.
Or mental health.
or anything. Yeah, there was. Now I didn't get any of that. I just got the short one, but it also didn't ask me the names. When I did it, it didn't ask you the names. It was just how many men, how many women, what age categories, do you own, do you rent? That was it. That was it. And now this stupid thing I got online, they want all the information they already have on me,
Exactly.
right? Now I got the short one, but the long one, the last time we did this one, I got that long one that had all these crazy questions. And I had such a good time with that, they'll never find me.
Well,
I was making up names and addresses and birthdays and the other thing they asked this time is what gender were you born and what gender are you now?
Yeah.
And I was like, still the same, but all's good. Not all working like it used to, but still there. And so, it was like so stupid.
Well, the second warning I got, they actually said,
Yeah.
I'm costing the government money by not promptly replying, and I'm like, I'm costing you money, like, really?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I heard that basically it's not actually a law that you have to fill it out.
It's only a law if it's only illegal to refuse to. So you just go,
I forgot.
I forgot, and just keep putting it off. It's not illegal to not fill it out. It's illegal to refuse to fill it out.
Yeah.
or you can create.
But you can just
My
say,
dog
I'm not
ate it.
refusing to do it, but can you show me where in law that I am required to do it?
Yeah.
And they have no answer to it.
Yeah.
So what happened?
And hold on a second, just a disclosure. We're not lawyers.
Yes.
So don't take our advice with us.
We had 3 censuses sent, one to the house where we live, farm out there, just sent another one. And a couple of weeks later, I got a notice on the door, a 3rd census. Didn't feel the other 2.
You take your
I
pick
mean,
for
why
what
would
to
they
do.
send, the same name, 3?
Are there any
Let me ask you guys something. What does it tell you that we live in a country where we have hesitation of filling out a census?
Exactly.
You know, we should live in a country where we have no problem answering things like this, like how many people in the house, whatever. Okay, that's fine. A census.
Well, as
But-
long as it's not too intrusive.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
this is what I'm saying. Like the way we feel about this country and about our government, this tells us something very, very important. We're not comfortable here. It doesn't matter if we're in Alberta or in Ontario. People are not comfortable in this country with where it's going.
Well,
And
even
Alberta-
back when they had tracking and tracing of people during the
Yeah.
so-called black.
Yeah, well, exactly. They used
I put
our
just weird names, weird addresses.
yeah.
If they were asking just in case there's a number, I just used whatever weird name I could come up with.
Yeah, but if you live in a country where you fear your government or you fear participating in democracy for that your government might persecute you for it or prosecute you for it, you got to do something about it. And Alberta independence is the thing.
What, by doing that, were you just practicing to fill out the Forever Canadian petition?
I did it even in Rock Creek, BC. Yeah.
So we have, if you guys don't have any more questions, maybe we'll wrap it up here. I'll let Kathy close or Shane close. We got a couple hour drive ahead of us. So yeah. Does anyone have any more questions?
Not a question, but a request. If I could possibly get a picture with you before you leave.
Possibly. Did you buy a picture ticket?
I
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I don't have a question, just a.
Yes, I'll take a picture with you.
Just a comment, because I hear, question comes up, how do you address this, or how do you get people interested or whatever. In Alberta, we recognize, as we've heard, that Ottawa actively suppresses Alberta's economy and actively basically is against Alberta prospering, handcuffs us, policies, all of those things. Like we know that happens. Do we understand why that happens? Like why the federal government has to do that? There's a reason why they have to do that. We know that we've addressed it already. We know that there's a region that elects the federal government, and then out west we don't have any bearing on what happens to the federal government. So their electoral base is in the east. We know that. They rely on them. In Alberta, when our economy has been very strong, what happens to the Canadian dollar? It gets very strong against the US dollar. And the stronger Alberta's economy gets, it strengthens the Canadian economy, which strengthens the Canadian dollar. What happens when the Canadian dollar is on par or above the American dollar? Well, in the East, their economy is manufacturing. And their manufacturing gets sold to the US. And if the Canadian dollar is weak, then it's attractive to the US to buy things from Canada. When the Canadian dollar is strong, there's no longer an economic benefit for Americans to buy Canadian products. So the East starts to lose manufacturing, auto manufacturing, all kinds of anything that's sort of value added with materials that they sell mainly to the US. Their economy starts to tank while ours is strong. They start to lose jobs and businesses start to tank or move to the States. So they rely on those people to get elected. So if they're all losing their jobs in the East, they're not happy with that government and they have to do something about it. The government has to do something about it. That's what all this is about. They cannot have the Canadian dollar strong. Fundamentally, they have to suppress the Alberta economy because that's what makes the Canadian dollar strong.
It's an interesting perspective, and I think you might have just made allies from a lot of people in the East.
If the federal government allows Alberta to sell natural resources, then the East will, the Canadian dollar will get strong, the East, their economy will tank.
The reason I say I think you made some allies in the East is because, for Alberta independence, because when Alberta leaves, that's a big chunk of the Canadian economy gone.
Yeah.
It's a lot of new wealth that's created,
Right.
and that Canadian dollar will inevitably suffer, and that would be good for manufacturing. So,
And
So you'd think that they would be all for us instead of fighting us.
I
So
did
for
not
all
see
of the-
that coming.
Yeah, so for all of the policies that Ottawa makes against natural resources, right, so the environmental movement, all of that, it's got nothing to do with the fact that the people in the East are environmentalists. It's got everything to do with that's how they hijack and make a movement in order to stifle Alberta. And
Interesting.
That's how they do it. That's
I
why
didn't
they
know
do
that.
it.
I think I got an answer for you. You're worried about the economy part about it. In Holland, we have the same thing. We found gas and become really wealthy. Holland's one of the wealthiest countries, like Norway, and Alberta can do the same. You're talking about a strong Canadian currency, and then the power of purchase will drop. There's that we had economically wise, it's called the Dutch disease. And in there is an answer. So look up the Dutch disease, and economically wise, you need to do some stuff, but it's really doable. The Norwegians done the same.
Interesting.
There's a couple of rules to this game. Rule number one is the West is supposed to, basically there to support the East. Rule number two is don't question rule number one.
Exactly.
There you go.
And that's been
It's been that way for years.
that's been since Clifford Sifton stood on the steps of the Manitoba legislature in, I'll say 1904, and said that it will be that, you can quote it better than I can.
We desire, every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up the factories and the workshops in Eastern Canada and contribute in every way to its prosperity.
And that was said on the House, and he is, as I was said before, you came in after I spoke, but he was the author, one of the main authors of the Alberta Act, the document that created the province of Alberta and the province of Saskatchewan. And he said that a year before they legislated the provinces into being.
I also heard that when Alberta was being formed or whatever, the settlers that were here mostly were like cattle ranchers from Texas.
Yeah.
And they migrated up here.
From the States, not so much from Texas, a lot of Kansas, a lot of Missouri.
That's basically why we're called like the Texas of the North, because we have such conservative views.
Well, if you take a look at where all of those settlers came from, they are from the mid part of the U.S.
Yeah.
And yes, they have very conservative views there as well. So that would make sense. But a lot of them came because you've got Yankee Valley, which was Erider. You've got
Kansas Ridge.
Yeah, Kansas Ridge, which is Rimbey. You've got Missouri, which became Urin, Saskatchewan, was originally called Missouri. They're all over Alberta and Saskatchewan, are towns that used to be or still are, and
American settlers.
correct.
Oh, one more, Jasper, and then
Well,
that's
the
it.
other question is more like it's a race against the machine.
Nice.
Oh.
The future is not written yet. Better days are not guaranteed, but they are possible if we choose the courage over fear. Unite over bitterness and hope over despair.
Beauty.
That's a place to end.
Thank you all for coming.
And on that note, I think I'd like to ask Kathy to close the prayer if she doesn't mind.
Sure. Father God, I want to thank you so much for bringing us together tonight and to have this conversation, to be able to have it cordially, to be able to have some tough conversations. And I pray that we take away from it everything that you would have us, and open up opportunities and an ability to be able to share what we've learned with those around us. Would you give others ears to hear and eyes to see what it is that we understand? And first and foremost, Lord, that they would see you and us everywhere we go. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Before you leave, there are 7 copies of Sheila Gunn Reid's book out there. Sheila donated
Only 7?
only 7. She donated 50 copies last night, and we sold 49 in Lacombe. We came here with 9. There's 7 copies left. Please grab a copy on your way out. And there's only $20 that just goes into our donation. Yes, they gotta pull their pants up again.
Well, thanks for joining us, folks, for another Let's Talk Alberta event in Vegreville, Alberta. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, different place. Tomorrow we're going to be in Drumheller. So we'll see you in Drumheller. Have a great night, everyone.